Isa, do you think we should begin?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So can let me just turn on screen share here. Can everyone hear me? So screen share has been enabled by the host. Could you please give me access? Screen share.
You can screen share now.
Right. Okay. Can everyone see my screen now? Isa
Yes,
is
we
my
can.
perfect. So in our last class, we covered lists, ordered lists, and unordered lists. We then moved on to tables. You know how to create a table and how you can change the size of individual cells and total width and height. Right. Then we looked at images and videos and how you could alter their width and their height. And then the last thing we did was adding audio to our content layer via HTML. Right. Today we'll be covering divisions. We'll also be covering sections, and then we'll be covering bookmarking. And at the end, we'll tell you how to make anchor links within the same web page. Right. So creating a new file here. Right. So if any one of you is still on Note, you can still use the same file as last time. Right. Just make sure that you um, enter your content between the two body tags. Right. So the first thing we'll be covering today is the division tag. Right. So this tag is usually used is very important when it comes to adding CSS elements to your to individual sections of your web page, right? So in some cases, you probably require certain CSS elements, or you want some part of your web page to look a certain way, and then you don't want the same things to carry onto the entirety of your page, right? So if you want localized um, CSS, if you want your CSS elements to only be visible in one specific section or one specific portion of your web page, then you use the division tag, right? So it also has a lot of other features, like you have a line over here. So, and I'll be telling you how to use that. But here, style is perhaps the most important feature that the division has, right? So before we move on to style, which is a completely different thing, but I'll tell you about the align feature, right? So align center. Very simple, you know what it says. So let's try adding a heading within this division, right? Um, web page, right? And then let me just save it in CyberAllies, division, saved, right? Okay, so let me just open this in my browser. Right, we have it open here in my browser now. Right, so as you can see, heading जो हमने दी, right, within the division, it is now aligned center. अगर हम ये निकाल दें, फिर just खाली div, so it will be automatically left aligned, right? If we add, say, right, so it will be right aligned. This is one of the very basic features of divisions, right? If you want to align your content to the left, to the right, to the center. By default, tables are aligned to the left. All content is aligned to the left, but again, by adding a division, you can align it to the right. For similarly, if you create another division over here, right, and you add a paragraph, sorry, this text, and you align to the center. So the content that was in the first division over here, which was aligned to the right, will remain aligned to the right. यहाँ पे उसका जो influence है वो खत्म हो गया, right? और जो second division है, उसका influence यहाँ शुरू हुआ, यहाँ खत्म. So everything in between this will be center line. So a very big problem that sometimes occurs within web pages, very complicated ones especially, is that you don't close divisions, or you, which leads to very messy, very messy looking web pages, because CSS elements or style elements from one division carry forward to the next, right? And so you have, say, for example, if you don't close a division and you've asked and you've and your code says that everything in that division will be aligned to the right, and then within that you add a table, but then you don't close that division. So the rest of the entirety of your content will now be right aligned, because that one division at the start was not closed, right? तो उसका influence फिर पूरे document में पूरे file में आता रहेगा. So it's very important to make sure that you close your divisions, or you'll still see their influence later on, even when you don't want them. Right, so this is the align feature, but the feature that we usually use divisions for is for adding inline CSS. Right, you can do this to any tag, and we'll be showing you how. But this is your first introduction to CSS. Right, so you add style and equals to sign, और यहाँ से अब इसके अंदर जो भी add करूँगा ना मैं, it'll be CSS. Okay, which has its own syntax, it has its own syntax, its own characters, it's completely different from a syntax, in some ways, in a syntax point of view, than HTML, right? It doesn't have the tags the way HTML does, right? You don't have to add alligator clips. It doesn't have the equals to sign. It prefers the colon and the semicolon. So we'll be telling you a lot about CSS, hopefully in this session if we get done in time, and also moving on, right? We might, if we have time, we might give you an introduction to CSS, but divisions are very important when it comes to adding inline CSS elements, and when you only want them to impact one portion of your page, right? So here's something that, a lot of people ask about, if I can have like different font sizes. So sorry, let's just make this easier to discuss. Right, so I'm not using HTML here, I'm using CSS. So all the text, all the paragraph text that I'll add here will be in the font size 62. This line of code here is not HTML, it is inline CSS, right? Similarly, if I've closed, so this division is now closed here. So this line of code will only impact this tag or this text, right? Because it's between the two division tags. Division जहाँ खुलती है और जहाँ बंद होती है, सिर्फ उसके दरमियान जो चीजें होती हैं उस पे उसके style elements का फर्क पड़ता है, right? This is why we use division, so that we can differentiate between two different portions and add whatever we want to two different portions, right? If we want them to look different, this is what we do. So just to show you what I mean, we add another division here. We add text within this division. This is text, and we go back to our default. Also, if you notice, divisions के दरमियान automatically HTML थोड़ी सी space डालता है. You can change the space in CSS. Usually, अगर आप heading के फौरन नीचे text डालें तो there's less space, but there's a line break. But you can see that there's a line break between the two divisions. We haven't really used them up till now because we didn't discuss CSS in much detail. But when you're adding a lot of CSS elements, you want to make your website presentable, divisions are your best friend, because it's very unlikely that everything you want, everything on a website looks the exact same way, right? And there are ways to do it via CSS alone, but just having that level of freedom to add style elements in line with your HTML. Okay, this is essentially a CSS command. This isn't an HTML tag, right? And you still have the ability to add this style element here. So it's a way to integrate the presentation of a web page into the content layer, right? Again, you can link style sheets, and you can add entire style sections in the head section of your HTML page, or even at any different point. But this, which is inline CSS, is very important when you want to have elements that are different from the rest of your document for just that one small portion, right? The next thing we'll be looking at is anchor tags, right? So let me just do this one thing here. I want to be able to scroll on this web page. Control C, and then I just like copy this a few times, and you'll see why in a second. If this gets confusing at any point, please let me. Okay, so basically what I wanted to do was, okay, so just make this easier. This is web page 1. Let's make this web page 2. Okay. Yes, so we're still working with the content layer, but we're using elements of CSS. No, we haven't shifted to the presentation layer yet. Isa will be handling the presentation layer, but this is just a way to add elements of CSS to HTML. So, when you're working with the content layer, you can still alter the presentation very slightly in this way. You can possibly alter it like completely as well, but it's just very inconvenient, and it's just much more difficult for you. This is much easier to have like style sheets separately, but this is just one way you can add elements of CSS or the presentation layer into your content layer. Yeah, so we haven't shifted to the presentation layer yet. We still have to cover anchor links. I hope that answers your question. So we have web page 3 here. I'm only doing this, adding the 1, 2, 3 to make sure that you know the difference, that these are 4 separate like sections of text, right? So यहाँ refresh किया, we have web page 1, 2, 3. So we essentially have 4, 3 तो दफा हो गया. We have like a discernible and scrollable web page. We can scroll through this. So say for example, okay, so to do what I'm about to do, to create an anchor link, what an anchor link does is it creates a link from one section of your web page, from one part of your web page to another part on the same web page, right? So if you want, say if you open your website, right, and someone ends up seeing this is the landing page, this is the home page, and you want them to move to a section which is on the same web page but down below. So for example, you have a link which you have a website, and all of it is one long web page, right? It isn't so एक ही web page है, सारा कुछ उसी पे, like different panels or different like sections for each thing you want to portray. It's very common, a lot of organizations use this style. So usme what you have to have is a button or a link which directs the person to the section that they want to see on the same page. For that, you don't add hyperlinks, you add anchors, right? You don't tell them to okay, इस पे click करें आप, फिर आप पूरा उनसे कहें कि जी ये URL है, आप इसको follow करें, right? No, what you do is you add anchor links so that the browser knows कि अच्छा उन्होंने इस part पे जाना है, web page के इस part पे, and it automatically scrolls for that. You can also have anchor links between pages, but the concept is essentially to scroll from one section of a page to another section of the same page, right? So for this, we use the section tag, right? And we create what's called a bookmark. Exactly. Let me just cut this from here, and this is where we want our section to close, right? We have IDs, or we want to create a bookmark right here. मतलब हमने browser को बताना है कि अच्छा अगर वो कहते हैं ना कि मैंने इस part पे ना, तो there's a bookmark for this section, right? And we use this, we assign it an ID, right? So let's say this is part 1 of my page, right? This is part 1 of my web page. ये अब ये अब part 1 है, right? This entire section here is part 1. Let's add another section here. Sorry. यहाँ से मैंने कट किया and I add it. Sorry, yeah. So this is my second section done, and sorry, मैंने so sorry I added it the नीचे, so I added here as well. और यहाँ पे मैं you'll find out what I'm. If this gets confusing, just let me know. Section एक और डाला, पहली closed है तो उसने मुझे option नहीं दी, right? So I have 3 sections now. Let me give them IDs. Let me create bookmarks, right? So this is part 2 of my web page. This is part 3, and let's call this part 4, obviously, because there's a thing going here. Control X and then Control V, right? Let's call this part 4. Right, so I've divided my web page into 4 sections. You won't see anything right away, which is fair, because this is just another thing for the browser to know कि अच्छा 4 section है और 4 section में क्या क्या चीजें हैं, right? तो अब we want to create a link from section 1 or section or part 1, the section we've called part 1. We want to create a link here ताकि अगर कोई बंदा ये हमारा पेज खोले and he sees section he sees web page 1 लिखा हुआ है, he sees के web page 2 लिखा है, 3 लिखा है, but he doesn't see web page 4, right? He doesn't know if web page 4 exists or not without scrolling down web page 4. So what we do is we create what's called an anchor link, right? So remember, if you remember this tag from the first lesson where we added a hyperlink, it's the same tag, right? But instead of adding a hyperlink, what we do is we add a hashtag part 4, ठीक है? And we add a link, go to web page part. By web page 2, I mean web page part 2. This is a separate web page. This is a part of the same web page, but it's just like we've divided them into sections. So web page section 1, web page section 2, web page section 3, and web page section 4. Web page section 4. The text doesn't matter at all. वो हमें बस link को किसी चीज़ से discoverable रखना होता है, right? So, and it takes me to web page section 4, right? So this is a link. I stay on the same page. If you see the scroll bar here, click किया मैंने, and it takes me down automatically, right? So इस तरह what you can do is you can have like links on the same page that anchor to a different section on that page. ठीक है? If you don't want to create a website with multiple web pages, you want all your content to be on the same page. You still want it to be easy to navigate. You don't want the person to just keep on scrolling until he finds what he's looking for. This is a very convenient way of like doing that. So another very important thing is that you can also add क्या कहते हैं anchor links to different pages, right? So say for example, I open, I have our file from last time open. सही है? If you have any questions as of right now, you can ask them in the chat and I'll answer them before moving on. Or if you want, you can unmute yourself as well and just ask. Okay, so if when I'm talking and you have a question, just leave it in the chat and I will address it later. Right, so this is our HTML file from last time. इस पे भी we have we talked about images, videos, and audio. But say for example, I am here, right? This is one page on my website, and I want to direct the person who's direct the viewer to another page, but I don't want him to just don't want to send him just to like the landing section वो या landing page वो होता है जहाँ पे आप जब website खोलते हो तो वो आपके सामने आता है, right? There's a question in chat, right? So you don't want them to end up there. You want them to end up on a like कोई section ऐसा जो काफी नीचे करके, right? Or for example, your home page has your contact information, right? But it's all the way down. And you don't want people to have to scroll all the way down from a different page when they're opening just to get to your contact information, right? So what you do is, let's say मैंने contact information, I go to division HTML, the file that I'm working with. I say here web page for web page contact details, right? I want to send them here. So what I do is, one second, I'm just cancel. Never mind. I want them to. I add a link. Say yeah. I add a link to division.html. So because they're in the same folder, I don't have to add any URLs before, क्योंकि वो दोनों एक ही folder में है, तो it'll automatically get added. So let me just open this in Chrome. Sorry. So we were working with list, right? And so we have a link here. अच्छा, यहाँ पे मैंने अभी सिर्फ division.html लिखा है. I have उसका the file name, right? जहाँ पे हमने वो contact वाला section बनाया. I haven't added the specific section because if you go here, you look, ये हमने section part, section ID जिसको हमने bookmark किया part 4 में, right? This is all the way down. And when you click this link here, it will take you to the top section, right? It doesn't scroll automatically. So you'll have to put in the effort and you have to look for it. नीचे, right? When you're talking about when you're talking about, like, especially with responsive websites, or websites that you want people to interact with and actually enjoy it. When you're talking about aesthetics, a very important part of that is to ensure that the person who's using your website doesn't have to spend a lot of time looking for what he wants to find, right? सब कुछ आसानी से उसे मिल जाए, and it's very intuitive navigating your website, right? It just adds to the user experience immensely. So we go back to list.html, which is the file we used last time, for anyone who is kind of confused slightly. And what we do here is कि अब अच्छा हमने division.html page में हमें पता है, web file में हमें पता है कि हमने ना 4 sections डाले थे, and one of those sections, the one we want the user to go to, is called, let's just check again, it's called section ID क्या, part 4, right? So we know that this section which we want to send the person to or the user to is called part 4. What we do here is we add that same hashtag and we write part 4. उस hashtag के बाद उस section का नाम. So let me refresh it. And it takes us directly to the web page contact details. I'll just do this side by side, second, so that you can find out what I mean. So now in list के अंदर ही हमारे पास अब 2 link are, right? They're in the same line. Let me just add a line break here, make it easier for you to understand. Right, so we have a link to page contact details and we have a link to page, right? Let me open this in new tab. ये हमने link to page पे click किया, we get the top of the page and we have web page contact details all the way down here. दूसरा, अगर हम link to page contact details click करें, so we are taken directly to the web page contact details. So that's how you can add anchor links to specific sections and also have them linked between pages, right? So that's very, very convenient you can do with HTML. Right, so the next thing we'll be looking at, before that, are there right, we have a question here. Okay. One other thing, which we'll be talking about with links, is to open a link in a new tab, right? So if everyone can see me now, see my screen, sorry, you add what's called a target within the anchor tag, right? जो tag हमने लगाया था link बनाने के लिए, उसी के अंदर एक और we add another piece of code. We call it, we add, या blank डाल सकते हैं. You can also use new, right? So अच्छा, let me go back to, I'm just using list here because it's much more convenient, because if you were going from division to other page, फिर पता नहीं चलता, because that's where we added all our sections, right? So what we do here is, अच्छा, so let me just refresh this page. हमने जो linked page है, we added this line over here, and now it automatically opens in a new tab, right? And but if you have link page to contact details, अगर हम उसे click करें तो it opens in the same tab. We do get the option with our browser, but this way it's just much easier for the user. If he wants to, if you want him to stay on the same page, like if you want him to be able to come back to the same page much easier, and also be able to access the content on the other page, this is a very convenient feature without him having to um, actually put in the extra effort of right clicking and saying acha, open a new tab. So this is one way you can, if so very very good example of this is, you want to keep someone interested in what's on your website, but you also want him to see this other really. Oh, okay, so the target here, if it, यहाँ पे we use it to open this link to, right? So ये यहाँ पे हमने link है, it's called the link to this page called division.html, जो दूसरा page, the one we made right now, right? This is the page we made today, the file we made today, and so the file we made last time, it has a link to this new file called division.html. और target से हम ये करते हैं कि हम browser को कहते हैं, अच्छा, we want this link to prompt the new window to open in a new tab automatically, right? हमें वैसे ही होता है कि if I want to open something in a new tab, I right click and then I click open link in new tab. लेकिन इससे ये होता है कि it automatically opens that link in a new tab, right? I don't have to do anything on my end. So a possible use case of this is, so for example, if you have a website and you've advertised something for someone else, right? So if you have a, say, you get to make a website for a large company or an organization which has a large company or an organization which is it's involved with a lot of different things, and it 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 has partners, right? So you have to advertise partners niche, right? So there's 5 different partners, and you want them to be prominent on your website, but you don't want the user to go over to their website completely, right? So you don't want to lose your traffic to them. So what you do is you add this line here. You add this line. You say, "Acha, I want this link to open, right? I want these people to visit this website, but I don't want them to leave my website. I still want them to stay here to have easy access यहाँ, because see, honest बात है, as most people in my experience, if they open a link and it opens the same tab, there's a very low chance that they go back and read जो लिखा हुआ था फिर से, right? It's just very hard to keep people's attention that way. But if you have that tab opening, that content opening in another tab, तो वो tab फिर भी खुला रहेगा पुराने वाला जहाँ पे हमारी website है, right? And so people will be more inclined to come back and go over the content. So यहाँ पे you have that freedom to open something in a new tab, right? So I think that is all we had to cover for HTML. If anyone has any questions, right, please let me know. I'll just teach you one last thing in this session, which is how to link style sheets. Actually, we'll cover that once we've done CSS. So abhi ke liye, if you have any questions regarding HTML, like the things we've covered in our last 3 classes, please let me know. and uske baad, if we have the time, so maybe we can also have a small introduction for CSS, because that's what we'll be moving on from the next class. So any questions? The entirety of HTML, right? Also, I'll be uploading this file um, to the classroom. I uploaded list.html. I think if anyone got the time to play around with that, well and good. Division bhi aapko you will find on the classroom. So, and I also, I don't, right. So as things are right now, I don't think we have any questions. Um, Isa, would you like to start with an introduction for CSS, Abhi, or would you just want me? Do you just want me to just go over everything once again?
I think you can teach them how to link the CSS file. We
Hmm.
do have time today.
Right. Perfect. Okay. So right. Okay. So let's say, okay, I want to link a style sheet to my HTML. So HTML, as we talked about in our first session, is very versatile in that it can accommodate a lot of different elements from a lot of different languages, right? So prime among them is CSS, right? So a very important part of having CSS, that ability to link style sheets, is so we do have questions, right? So we have a question here. I'll move, if we have time I will start with CSS, but other questions and please ask them right now, because iske baad, we won't be focusing on HTML much. A division is different from a section. A section, we use sections to define, to like give to make bookmarks. सही है. अगर section, कोई चीज section के अंदर है ना, तो the only thing that matters is ये part, right? So it gets this kind of bookmark, right? So if you want to navigate to that section, you can't navigate to a division. You can only navigate to sections with specific IDs. Right? Divisions में ये होता है कि you can also align sections, right? But usually with divisions, what the freedom you have with divisions is much more flexibility with the CSS elements you can include. So sections हम use करते हैं just to define or just to give that specific portion of the web page an ID, ताकि हम anchor links वगैरह से उसे उस तक navigate कर सकें. Oh, so sorry, just let me get this question first and then I'll answer yours as well. So sections, we use sections just so that we can tell the browser कि अच्छा ये सारा कुछ जो है ये इसकी identity ये या ये bookmark लगा लो एक, because this is part one of my website, of my web page, right? This is part two and so on. This is part two and so on, right? And we use them when we create a bookmark. The very convenient thing, just as we showed us, just as I showed you as well, is that we can add anchor links from one section or one portion of your web page to another portion, right? Sections इसलिए use करते हैं ताकि हम एक bookmark डाल दें या एक ID दे दें specific portion को, और वहाँ तक या वहाँ से anchor links हम बना लें ताकि within a page navigation हम कर सकें. Divisions का जो फायदा होता है, divisions are much more useful when it comes to adding CSS elements to very specific portions of your, like, one advantage, right? Another thing you can do with divisions is adding rows. If you don't want, if so, for example, right, this is one thing that we can cover. One thing you can do, like we did tell you how to work with tables now, but another thing you can do with a division is that you can, yeah. Wait, but let me answer questions and then I'll get to this. This is one last thing. So you can do a lot of things with divisions, in that you can add CSS elements, you can create rows, because say for example, which I'll teach you in just a bit, photos डालनी है, 4 photos का call, like section बनाना है, you can either do that using a table or you can just directly do it via a division function called a row, right? उसमें you have like आगे बहुत freedom, बहुत freedom नहीं, लेकिन you have certain degrees of freedom as to how many elements you want in one row and everything. So that's something you can do. And the most of the freedom you get with the division is with the CSS elements, the inline CSS elements, right? So will be when we talk about CSS, especially when you get on the syntax and everything, you'll find out कि क्या इसके फायदे हैं in more detail. But basically, this what we've done here is like a snippet of CSS or divisions में ये फायदा होता है. We can add these. We can add these to images as well. अगर कोई image specific चीज डालनी है, but you don't want that to apply to every single image, you can do that for like specific divisions. कि अच्छा इस division के अंदर सारी images इस size के. So that's something that's very convenient with divisions. But sections we use them just for bookmarking and to create anchor links from one section to the other. The next question we had was talking about the target tag. Acha, the target tag is simply just well, it isn't even a tag actually, just a command. The this you don't need to know what it means. बेसिकली इससे हम बस ये सिग्निफाई कराना चाह रहे हैं कि अच्छा ये लिंक जो है ना ये हमने एक दूसरी विंडो में खुलवाना है. दैट्स बेसिकली इट. दैट्स व्हाई वी हैव दिस ब्लैंक है. अगर आप ये ना डालें तो डिफॉल्ट जो होता है वो होता है ओपन इन द सेम टैब, बट इफ यू ऐड दिस तो इट जस्ट ओपन्स इट इन अ डिफरेंट टैब. that's the entire significance of this word here, this underscore blank. Right, okay, so one last thing that I want to cover today is rows and how you can add rows using divisions. So we go back to division. Actually, do we have the time for this? Achha, so if anyone has any questions, iske baad phir I probably won't be able to cover questions, because then we'll move on to CSS. So this is your last chance to ask any questions at all. Okay, so we'll move on to one very interesting use of rows, okay, of divisions, sorry, and that's similar to a table in some ways, but it's adding like columns. It's adding a grid, right? This isn't like this isn't. Do you think we should cover this? This isn't technically HTML. Do we cover this when it shows up in a template or something? I feel कि वहाँ ज़्यादा convenient रहेगा.
We do have like 10-12 minutes. I think we can cover it. It's up to you.
Okay. I feel that we'll leave this to when it shows up in templates and everything, because this isn't like fun. This technically isn't HTML. So I'll just we will cover this. But not right now, because then it'll just be kind of confusing. But for now, I just tell you how to link a style sheet, which is a very important part of what we'll be doing next. So, यहाँ पे I create this file. So this is a CSS document. So यहाँ पे मैं कहता हूँ sorry. So यहाँ पे okay, font size so very basic. That's it. And I name this CSS. Sorry, it's called as main, and this is going to be saved as a CSS file. I think I'm making a mistake. I'm not really that good with CSS. Anyways, we have a CSS file. I'll leave Isa to cover the details on that. But essentially, what you have to do is the tag we use for this, we can add, we can link them at any point. अच्छा गलत जगह, but preferably जो data अगर आपने कुछ link करना है कुछ भी, तो you should have that in the head section, right? So the one line that you need is हमने उसे बता दिया कि हमें एक स्टाइल शीट लिंक कर रहे हैं, राइट? You don't have to add a line space here, एक सीधी लाइन में भी हो सकता है, right? Then you add type. Type भी जरूरी नहीं होता, it's your choice, right? But you know, just much more convenient if you, especially if someone tries to access your website from a dated browser, तो वरना मसला हो सकता है, right? And then you add the reference कि वो फाइल है कौन सी असल में. We named it main.css, ठीक है? So if I just open division.html here, and probably something wrong with my CSS file, I will look into that. But this here, you've essentially linked this style sheet here. This line of code is incorrect, sorry, but this is still a style sheet. इसमें we've defined कि अच्छा ये CSS document है, इसमें हमने character set भी define कर दिया सारा कुछ. We will be learning more about CSS from Isa later on in our next session as well. But essentially ये जो इसमें हम अब जो भी डालेंगे, right? Any content we add here, any code we add here for CSS will automatically be implemented in this. Yeah, it will be detected by this HTML file. ठीक है? When we open it in a browser, तो वो information content जो है वो यहाँ से लेगा, कुछ जो भी presentation elements अगर हमने यहाँ define किए हैं वो यहाँ से लेगा, लेकिन बाकी जितने भी presentation layer के content जो भी उसे चाहिए ना वो इसमें से लेगा, क्योंकि we've now linked these two together. So any style sheet you want to link, any code you want to link, any like JavaScript file you want to link, this is the basic template for that. Link tag है, ये भी one, this is a self-closing tag, so you don't have to add, you know, there's no, this does not exist, okay? Sorry. This here, you can add it, but there is no need. There is no need for this. Delete it, it will not make a difference at all, right? और ये अब जो है ना, ये style sheet हमारे HTML document के साथ link हो गई है, and the browser will automatically detect कि अच्छा यहाँ से भी मैंने presentation ले गया कि कोई चीज़ मुझे मिली, this is inline CSS, ये मुझे अगर मिल गया ये भी मैंने show करना है, और मुझे इसमें से like यहाँ में से जो भी मिलता है I will, मतलब there are certain rules you have to follow, but the browser will now detect that this file main.css is linked with this HTML document, which is called division.html, and presentation elements present in that document will automatically appear, or you automatically appear how you want them to appear on your HTML file. So that's how you link a style sheet. We'll be talking more about style sheets in our next session with Isa. So before I end, are there any questions from anyone about HTML as a whole? Because this we will be moving away from HTML, and hopefully if we get the time at the end, we will have a refresh session if we get the time. We will also be having an activity which involves both HTML and CSS, where we edit a template, but until that, we will not be covering much HTML. There are obviously certain things we have to cover in HTML, in CSS, which involve a bit of HTML, but for HTML as a whole, this is basically it. So you know, there are a lot more tags. We couldn't cover all of them. Obviously, I will be sending over a list of all possible tags and how they're used. But you know, for the important ones, these are all the ones which you will come across on a daily basis when you're working with templates or when you're creating your own website as well, a web page, sorry, or whatever. So this was HTML. If anyone has any questions, ask now. You can ask them in the Google Classroom as well. But कल से our session at 6 o'clock will be focused entirely on the basics of CSS, and mm, adding elements to the presentation layer. So this is it for the content layer. If you have any questions, please ask them now, or if you don't, so I think that's all for this session. Isa, I feel के हो गया, मतलब HTML cover हो गया, I feel.
Yeah, tomorrow we have the session at the same timings, and we'll also be putting up a video to show how to download Dreamweaver. So for those of you who are still not able to download, do check that video out. And yeah, that's it. See you all tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone. You can leave the session now. It is elapsed. If any